the cloud features or cloud concepts along with the Docker we are going to cover. So whatever the plan is today, the whole day, we are going to learn all the concepts related to the Spring Boot. Today, we are going to learn completely all the concepts related to the Spring Boot. Then after that, we are going to start working with the microservices development, Spring Boot microservices development that we are going to see on tomorrow. Microservices along with the Spring Cloud concepts, that is applying the cloud concepts and all those things, Docker, that we are going to see on the tomorrow whole day. So the point here is in this weekend batch, I'm not going to type a code. Okay, I will show my existing application line by line. I will explain through the code, line by line will go, and also the nodes. Also, I have my material. I will share all my examples and my material in the Google Drive link separately. Okay, by tomorrow at the end of the class, I will share it. Interview questions and all those things also, it's there in the notes, and as well as I will discuss about interview questions during the concepts also. Okay, guys, that is what an agenda of this course. And let me introduce myself before going to start the demo. My name is Sai, having 13 plus years hands-on training and real-time experience on Java and Android platform. From last 3.5 years, I am working with microservices development on the different projects. I'm working with microservices on different projects. Okay, almost 3.5 years I have. So currently working as a senior architect in Wells Fargo. From 2007 onwards, I started teaching Java, Android, and the Spring Boot training is almost about from 3 years onwards. I have teaching number of batches, weekend batches or normal batches of the Spring Boot from last 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years. So 2007 onwards, I started training. More than 500 plus batches I have trained till now. So development, real-time experience plus training experience, guys, both I have. So that is what my overall experience. And all the examples I am going to cover, everything is completely based on the real-time scenarios. So what are the different cases we are faced during the project development and all those things. I've explained the scenarios and all. That is very important during the concept discussion. So that will get a solid understanding on the concepts, when to use and when to apply and all those things. So the only one thing you have to do in this today and tomorrow's session is you must fully focus on what I'm saying, and I will give a separate time for you people. Okay, so for questions and answers, you can ask later. Now, yes, Pranay, the code, yeah, code explanation and everything will be, you have to learn. Material means the concepts and how it will work and all, the points and all, everything will be there in the material. Code explanation, how the flow of my each and every application will go, I will explain it. You have to listen and all the points to understand. Any more questions, guys, before going to start the demo? Any agenda related thing, discussion, let me know. Any questions, guys? Definitely. Okay. Duration of this course, that's what I told. Today and tomorrow. Today 8 hours, tomorrow 8 hours. Total 16 hours. Okay. Fees and all, you can talk with management, guys. So management, you can talk with management after a demo. I will give half an hour time after the demo. Demo will be up to 10:30 now. So 10:30 to 11, I will give half an hour. In between that, you have to pay the fees and all. The link will be changed and everything. And from 11 o'clock onwards, we'll continue with our session. Okay, that is the process. Any questions, let me know. Shall I start? Shall I start the discussion? Any questions, let me know about the agenda and all. If you want the course content and all, what I am going to cover and everything, you can get the course content from the management and what are the topics I am going to cover. Everything, what I discussed in the regular classes, all topics will be covered, guys. No doubt. I have trained more weekend batches up to now. No doubt about that. Will cover. Yes, exactly, Kailash. You have to pay the fees after the demo. 10:30 to 11. I will give a time break. 10:30 to 10:30 to 11, I will give the break. In between that, you have to talk with management, pay the fees. Who pay the fees and all, they will get a new link. This link will expire after the demo. So you people need to join the link. By 11 o'clock, we'll continue our topics and all those things. And in between that, I will give the breaks also. Don't worry. Interesting things, topics and everything will be goes on very smoothly. This is not my first weekend batch. Don't worry, guys. I have finished more Spring Boot weekend batches up to now. Almost, I think this is the 25th weekend batch or something. Okay, don't worry. We'll cover all the topics. I know. Okay, so only thing from you is you have to be careful, be proactive, and whatever the doubts you have, I will give a time separately every time in the middle of the class. I will ask you any questions and answers like this. You can ask what are the questions you have and all. And the post after completing the course tomorrow, I will give my mail ID. Any questions or anything related thing, doubts are going forward, you can send me a mail to me. I will reply back. So that is about the agenda and all those things. So I think hope everyone is clear. I want all people response, guys, because this is an online session. I am not seeing your faces and all, so that you must be more proactive. Please chat inside that whenever if we are ready to take the session. Guys, so only two people are saying, Pranay Singh and Kailash. What about Ramakrishna, Seema, Siddharth, Shikhar, Prasanthi? Good, good, good. Rahul, cool. Fine, guys. So now let's start our discussion today. We'll talk about Spring Boot. So about Spring Boot. So what is Spring Boot actually? So what is the use of the Spring Boot? We already have a Spring framework in the market. We already have a Spring framework in the market. Then why we need to go for the Spring Boot? What is an important beyond that? So Spring Boot is a framework. Spring Boot is a framework which was implemented. Spring Boot is a framework which was implemented on the top of the Spring framework. Okay. Spring Boot is a framework which was implemented on the top of Spring framework. Spring Boot is a framework which was implemented on the top of Spring framework. Okay, guys. That means what are the features? What are the features which are available in the Spring framework? What are the modules which are supported in the Spring framework? All are available in the Spring Boot. All are available in the Boot, guys. Okay. So, Spring Boot framework is implemented. So Spring Boot is a framework which was implemented on the top of the Spring framework. Means what do you mean by that? Spring Boot is not an independent framework, guys. It is not an independent framework. It is built on the top of Spring framework. So what are the features and modules we have which are available in the part of the Spring framework? All are available in the Spring Boot. So that is the most important point, guys. Okay, so then why you are going to learn this Spring Boot? So what is an importance beyond that? In Spring framework, we have some problems, guys. There are some drawbacks are available in the Spring framework, and these drawbacks are overcome by introducing the Spring Boot. Okay, so let us discuss about what are the problems we are facing in the Spring framework and what are the benefits of the Spring Boot and all. We'll talk about the point more detail. First of all, Spring Boot introduced in 2014 from the Pivotal team. Spring Boot introduced in 2014 Spring Boot introduced in 2014 from the Pivotal team. Nowadays, that means from the last 2.5 years, 2 to 3 years, in this period, the existing projects, the legacy applications are converted into Spring Boot applications, started converting them. That is, the microservices based applications is the current trend in the market, a hot cake in the market. So what are the existing projects we have? What are the existing projects we have? All those are monolithic based applications. Those are. What is monolithic and why we need to go for microservices? So this point I will discuss in more detail. Okay, now only we'll discuss about that. Before that, just try to understand what I'm saying. The Spring Boot framework is implemented because to overcome the problems which are coming from the Spring framework. Some drawbacks are there. To overcome those drawbacks, the Spring Boot has been introduced. So it was introduced in the year of 2014 from the Pivotal team. So Pivotal team is a open source company. That is, it's a non-profitable company only. Simply you can say. The team introduced the Spring framework, and later the same team introduced Spring Boot. So Pivotal team is just like in collaboration with multiple experienced persons, many people from different organizations join the hands in this team dedicatedly to work on that. So that is the most important point, guys, what we need to understand. Okay, so we understand about a small basic introduction. Now let us discuss about features of Spring Boot or building blocks of Spring Boot. So let us discuss about what are the benefits of Spring Boot we have, and what are the problems in the Spring framework. We'll talk about in this point only in detail. So features of Spring Boot is nothing but starters, auto configuration, CLI, and Actuator. Okay, so these are the basic building blocks of the Spring Boot. Okay, so let us talk about each feature in detail. What is starter? What is auto configuration, CLI, Actuator? All these four things are the basic building blocks of the Spring Boot. So now let us talk about what is starter actually. Starter is nothing but it is a one-time shop. Starter is nothing but it's a one-time shop for the programmer. It is a one-time shop for the programmer or developer. What the dependencies? What are the dependencies which are required for your application? Suppose, for example, if you are working with security integration, Spring Security Module integration, for the Spring Security Module, what are the dependencies which are required? Usually, developer will spend his time separately on Googling only. That means what are the dependencies? Dependencies are nothing but jar files. What dependencies are required? What are the different jar files we need to require? What are the versions of the jar files? We need to Google it, right? And you must add those dependencies in your Maven form.xml file or in the build.gradle file if you are using Gradle. Okay, so this is the unnecessary waste of time. You have to spend a lot of time on the Googling only, whatever the module we are going to work. Suppose security module, similarly Spring Jdbc module, Spring ORM module, similarly Spring Batch module, Spring Web module, Spring AOP module. Different modules are there in the Spring, right? Even though in your companies also we have a custom modules, company own developed modules will be there, own application. So you have to spend a lot of time on for each module, whatever the module you want to integrate into your application, whatever the module you want to communicate, you have to Google all the dependencies. What are the dependencies which are required for your application? You have to Google it, all the dependencies, okay? And then you have to add Why? Because you don't know how many jar files required for that module. And make sure the versions of the jar file must be compatible. Because one jar file, what are the classes are there in the jar file that will be depend on other classes belong to the jar file. If the versions of the jar file was mismatched, if it is not compatible, your build will fail. So this is what the developer struggle in the normal application. To overcome these problems, in the Spring Boot, they introduced a concept called starter. Starter is nothing but it is a one-time shop. In fact, starter is also a dependency only. In fact, starter is also a dependency only, but internally it is pointed to bundle of dependencies or bunch of dependencies. Starter is nothing but it is also one dependency only, but that is internally pointed to bundle of dependencies. So developer no need to spend your time on gathering all the dependencies here. That means the point is for every module, whatever the module available in the Spring framework, whatever the module which was available in the Spring framework, for each module, we have a starter separately. For example, see Spring hyphen boot hyphen starter hyphen web. This is for Spring web module. Spring hyphen boot hyphen starter hyphen web. This is for Spring web module. Okay. Spring hyphen boot hyphen starter hyphen Jdbc. This is for Spring Jdbc module. So just for your idea, guys, I'm typing the starters. So for each module in the Spring, we have a starter. See the starter names, if you observe here, all the starters are having the same prefix. Spring hyphen boot hyphen starter, having the same prefix, just the module name will be changed. So this is the common rule in the Spring Boot. So every starter in the Spring Boot always have the same prefix name, Spring hyphen boot hyphen starter. Just the module name will be changed so that you can easy to understand, right? What I told you, every starter is nothing but it's a dependency. Every starter is nothing but it's a dependency which is pointed to, which provides information about what are the dependencies required? What are the dependencies required for the Spring Web module? And what are the versions of the dependencies? All that information is provided by this web starter, Spring Boot Starter Web. So, who collect this information? Your Maven. Maven collect this information. Maven or Gradle, because both are build tools only. Those are building your application. Building means compiling and packaging your application. So, your starter will provide the information about what are the dependencies which are required and what are the versions of the dependencies. That whole information is provided by this starter. So with the help of this starter, Maven or Gradle download all these dependencies information from the Maven central repository, right? So I think everyone knows about Maven central repository, guys, right? So Maven central repository, this repository will contain all the libraries. So mavenrepository.com, this is a central repository. In this repository only, all the libraries, all the dependencies are available here only. Okay. So your Spring Boot starter, every starter is responsible to provide all the required dependencies information. So what are the dependencies which are required for each and every starter? The dependencies information is provided to your build tool, that is Maven or Gradle. So Maven will take care about downloading all the dependencies for your application. So that is the use of starter. It is a one-time shop for your. So developer life is very easy, guys. So what is an advantage? What is an advantage? Tell me. If I want to integrate Spring Web module in my application, or if I want to integrate Spring Jdbc module in my application, developer no need to spend any time. What are the dependencies you have to add in the project? What are the versions of the dependencies? No need to Google it. No need to do all those things. Just directly add the starter, the required starter in your form.xml of your project or in the build.gradle file. Automatically, all the dependencies will be available. So that's what I'm calling it as a one-time shop. Okay. Similarly, guys, you can create customized starter also. Similarly, you can create customized starter also. Customized starter is nothing but our own starters, user-defined starters. Okay. That means you can create your own starter. For example, you have an application in the company. You have your own module in the company. Module is nothing but a project again only. Okay. For that module, if you are creating a starter, what is an advantage if you create a starter for your module? Other people means in your company, in other projects, they can add that starter. They can communicate with your module very easily. What are the dependencies which are required for that? So customized starters are very, very important in companies. User-defined starters, creating our own starters. That also I will cover, guys. So whenever if we are creating user-defined starters, means our own starters, the naming convention is very different. It is in the reverse order. For our own starters, you have to give the starter name first as module name. Module name first, then followed with the prefix spring-boot-starter. This is the mandatory rule. This is the mandatory rule you have to follow. You must follow. Module name spring-boot-starter. This combination you must follow whenever if you are going to create your own starter, user-defined starter. So whatever the module name we have, you must give that module name according to your project, and the prefix must be spring-boot-starter. So this was the convention you must follow while creating the starter for your application. Remember, Spring Boot is a opinionated framework. Opinionated framework means you can customize the Spring Boot according to your requirement. So Spring Boot is always an extension for you. You can add, you can modify the configuration according to your project requirement and according to your company standards. You can customize it. That is the meaning of the Spring Boot, opinionated framework. So I think, hope you understand about the primary or the basic building blocks of the starter. Okay. Now let me know any questions from this starter, guys. Up to now, what we discussed, any questions, please let me know. You can chat with me. So are you clear? Okay. Krishna Raju, Kailas is Pranay, Nagesh, Prasanti, Seema Tiwari, Siddhartha, Srikar. Are you clear, everyone? Any questions? Let me know about starters. So, yeah, some questions. No, Kailas. Just for your idea, I given. For each module in the Spring, we have a starter. Totally 13 modules, 13 plus modules are there, no, in the Spring. For every module, there is a starter provided in the Spring Boot. Whatever the Spring module we have, for every module, there is a starter. That is the point. Okay. So now hope you guys understand what is a starter and what is an importance of the starter. So we'll talk about practically all these points. So my whole whole class demonstrates about the Spring Boot concepts only, right? Today's class is fully on the Spring Boot concept. That is about, we'll talk about the starter, how to work with the starters and all, how the starters will work internally. Yeah, obviously, Prasanti, it is obvious. Without starter, nothing in the Spring Boot. These are all the basic building blocks of the Spring Boot. Nothing. Without starters, nothing. Okay. So, right. All right. So, I will give a brief idea on each and every concept in detail. What are the features of this? And we'll see practically in each and example going forward. Today we are going to learn all these things only. Don't worry, you'll see in the example. Now let us discuss about what is auto configuration. So auto configuration is the one of the excellent feature in the Spring Boot. Auto configuration is the one of the excellent feature in the Spring Boot. So that is the most important thing. So it is a backbone of the Spring Boot application, guys. It is a backbone of your Spring Boot application. So that is very, very important. Okay. It is a backbone of your Spring Boot application. Without auto configuration, there is nothing. I will tell you one story, guys, before going to talk about what is auto configuration. Generally, in your Spring application, usually the configuration part, generally what you people will do for configuration part, usually the configuration part will take care either in the application context.xml file, or you have to annotate your classes with the @configuration with the help of the classes. You can do configuration. Configuration means what? The database configuration, security related configuration, MVC related configuration, whatever it may be. Generally, this configuration part the developer need to do either by preparing application context.xml file or by working with annotation. That means by preparing @configuration, you must apply the annotation on the top of that class. You must do accordingly, right? So that is the important point. But in Spring Boot, no need to worry about the configuration part, guys. The configuration will taken care automatically in the background. In Spring Boot, we are not going to prepare application context.xml files or annotations for configuration. Okay. So Spring Boot will take care about the configuration automatically. For example, if you want to connect with the MySQL database, if you want to communicate or if you want to establish the connection with MySQL database, what you need to do generally, what were the steps you have to do in the normal Spring applications? You have to add a Spring Jdbc module. What are the dependencies which are required if you are using Spring Jdbc? Or if you are using Hibernate, you have to add the Hibernate dependencies in your application, ORM, whatever it may be. So along with that, you have to declare the configuration like JDBC template, driver manager, data source, the connection pool configuration. You have to do all these things, configuration stuff, right? But Spring Boot will do all these things in the background for you. It will do the configuration automatically for you. Okay, that means what the developer must do means whatever the JDBC driver you provided in the class path in your project, whatever the JDBC driver you added in the project, based on the JDBC driver, the database connection is automatically done. For example, if I add MySQL driver in the class path, MySQL driver database connection will be done. If I add Oracle driver in the class path, Oracle database connection will be done automatically. Okay, so that means developer no need to provide any configuration explicitly. So Spring Boot will do configuration for whatever the module. Module means, see, whatever the Spring Boot starter you added in your application, whatever the Spring Boot starter you added in your application, for every Spring Boot starter, there is a auto configuration will be there. So auto configuration means doing the configuration stuff for your module automatically. And remember, in most of the cases, we'll work with auto configuration only. In some situations, you have to provide external configuration also. External configuration means you have to write @configuration classes. You have to bypass the configuration. In some situations, we don't want to go for auto configuration. When means I will explain, guys. Through program I will explain. I cannot explain right now. This is not the right time. Through application we'll see. So auto configuration by default provided by Spring Boot, depends on the module of the Spring what you integrated in the project. Depends on the requirement. You can go whatever the choice it may be. But in some situations, either you have to bypass the auto configuration. Bypassing means you have to provide external configuration. External configuration means preparing @configuration class. Or some people, what they will do, they will add some additional configuration along with internal configuration also. Internal means auto configuration. Like that also you can do. So that facility is available. So I already told you that Spring Boot is an opinionated framework, guys. So along with the auto configuration, if you want to provide our own configuration additionally also, you can do it. If you are not interested to go for auto configuration, you can simply bypass it also. Bypassing means you can disable it, or you can override that auto configuration by providing our own configuration also. That facility is also available. Okay, so this is the another important point, guys, to understand the difference between the Spring and the Spring Boot. So coming to the third component, CLI, command line interface. CLI stands for command line interface. So what we are doing in this command line interface actually means command line interface provides some set of commands. This component, this CLI component is used by the Groovy developers. The CLI component is used by the Groovy developers. That means the Spring Boot is supported to 3 different programming languages. You can use Spring Boot based on Java. Spring Boot is supported to Kotlin. Based on the Kotlin programming language, you can work with Spring Boot. Using Groovy, you can work with Spring Boot. Okay, so Spring Boot is supported to 3 different things. So going forward, Kotlin and Groovy These two are going forward, are currently also more popular than the Kotlin, because Kotlin and Groovy are more user-friendly syntaxes as compared to Java. That means Java is not outdated, guys. Java is not outdated, but comparing to the Java, syntaxes are, that means while writing the code, complexity of the code is reduced in the Kotlin or Groovy. That is what the programming language is meant for. If you know Java, you can understand the Kotlin and you can understand the Groovy also. Nothing great in that. Okay. Interesting point is whether it is a Java, whether it is a Kotlin, or whether it is a Groovy, whatever it may be, all these are converted into bytecode instructions only. All these are converted into bytecode, whether it is a Groovy or Kotlin or Java, all these are converted into intermediate code called bytecode instructions only. And these are executed on the Java runtime environment only. So that is the most important point, guys. Okay. So I will show you how to develop this Spring Boot application on the Kotlin. See, Kotlin code can communicate with Java code, or Java code can communicate with Kotlin code also. Both you can do. Even in Groovy also same story. But remember, guys, try to learn Kotlin and Groovy also. Anyhow, in the tomorrow's class, I will show you, instead of Java, how to develop this Spring Boot application on the Kotlin. Also, I will cover. If you want to learn Kotlin programming language, mostly there is a weekend batch separately on Kotlin, like Saturday and Sunday. One weekend batch will be there by me. That will announce shortly. So who are interested, you can join that weekend batch. You can learn the completely Kotlin programming language, because Kotlin is the latest programming language. Companies are started converting into Kotlin code, Java code into Kotlin code. That is the point you need to understand, guys. More easy, but syntaxes you have to learn, the flow and everything you have to learn. All the concepts of the Kotlin and the syntaxes, internal memory management, objects, classes, inheritance, polymorphism, interfaces, exception handling, multi-threading, everything will be same. Internal memory management, everything will be same. But the syntaxes, the style of writing the code is different. Internally, same concept, what you learn in the Java, the JVM, the story, everything is same. Okay. So CLI concept, this command line interface is for Groovy people. CLI provides some set of commands. CLI provides some set of commands for the Groovy people who want to develop Groovy scripts. That is Spring Boot applications based on the Groovy. So this CLI is only for Groovy developers only, not for the Kotlin or Java programmers. Okay. So if you know Groovy, you can directly go to this CLI component. Commands will be there. Okay. Then coming to the fourth component, actuator. So what are actuators actually? Actuators are nothing but it provides post-production support. Actuators are nothing but it provides post-production support for our application. Actuators are nothing but it provides post-production support for our application. Post-production means, what do you mean? What is production? First of all, production is nothing but live. Customers have started using your application. That is live production. So once the project goes to live, once the customers have started using your application, then the real task will be started, guys. There will some issues will come. Different errors will come. In production also we'll get the errors, bugs. Some are minor bugs, some are major bugs. We'll get different issues. So post-production support is nothing but once the project went to live, you have to do monitoring on that. You have to do monitoring on that application. What was the health of that application? How much memory it is taking? How much memory is freely available? What is the load? How many number of users request is coming every day? Okay, what was the average response time? You have to calculate all these things. Where exactly the error is coming? Okay, how many number of objects will be created? What was the auto configuration and all? So actuator is a ready-made component. Actuator is a ready-made component which provides support for our application, post-production support. So developer or your company no need to buy a separate tool. No need to buy any separate tool, guys, for working with actuator. Okay, that means no need to spend a money separately to buy any tool for monitoring purpose. So the monitoring operations, all these things will be taken care by actuator. And also we can create custom actuators also. Custom actuators means our own monitoring things. If you want to add additionally, if you want to connect with any other channels or external modules or external tools in your company, if you want to do some additional configuration, yes, you can create custom actuators also. User defined actuators, that facility is also available. So these are the things you must understand, the features of the Spring Boot or the basic building blocks of the Spring Boot. So based on these features, hope you got a clear clarity. What is the difference between the Spring and the Spring Boot? So Spring doesn't have the starters. Spring doesn't have the auto configuration. Spring doesn't have this actuators. No post-production support in the Spring. So all these are the benefits in the Spring Boot as compared to the Spring framework. And Spring Boot framework is implemented based on microservices architecture style. Spring Boot framework is implemented based on microservices architecture style. Based on the microservice architecture style, Spring Boot is implemented. Whereas the Spring framework is implemented on monolithic architecture style. Monolithic is the legacy architecture style, and microservices architecture is the current trend. The Spring Boot framework is implemented based on microservice architecture model for developing microservice applications. And whereas Spring framework is implemented to support for monolithic application, architecture-based applications. So that is the point what you need to understand initially about what is Spring Boot and what is Spring Framework. Okay. So any questions, guys, up to now? Please ask me. Do you have any questions? Please let me know. Hello, guys. What happened? I will tell you monolithic and microservices shortly. Don't worry. We'll explain what is monolithic and what is microservices, why we need to go for microservices. We'll discuss about now only. Other than that, up to now, what we discussed, any questions, please let me know. Nagesh, no doubt. Kailas, okay. What about others? Prashanti, Seema, are there any different types of actuators? Yes, that's what I'm saying. We have built-in actuators. So with the help of that, we are going to provide the post-production support for our application. Those are the ready-made components. Once the project deployed into the live environment, we can start monitoring directly. And also, you can create custom actuators also, our own actuators based on the configuration, based on our own requirement, we can implement also. Shrikar, yeah, sure, Tiwari. I will provide examples. Definitely, programs will be started. Okay, these are all the introduction. Briefly, I giving the idea about all these things. So today we'll see a lot of examples and all this concept. We'll get a solid understanding in all this flow. Don't worry. Try to catch the points as of now. Yeah. Okay. What about others? Prasanti, Seema, Siddhartha, Sidhu, these people are replying. What about Shrikar? Sanjay, I think you joined just now only. I saw. Try to understand this point, what I'm saying. Pranay, Nagesh, okay. Krishnaraju, Kailas, okay. Any questions? Let me know. Okay. Hope you are clear. So all these points are there in my material, guys. Don't worry. The notes and everything, what we discussed, everything is there in my notes, my material. So I'll forward to you by tomorrow at the end of the class. Yeah, it depends on your infrastructure configuration. It depends upon the number of microservices and depends on your infrastructure configuration. We'll talk about in the architecture level. Okay. What are the things involved? So Now let us see. There are two types of currently there are two types of versions in Spring Boot. One is Spring Boot 1.x. Another one is Spring Boot 2.x. There are two types of versions in the Spring Boot. Spring Boot 1.x version is there. Spring Boot 2.x version is there. Two different versions. So Spring Boot 1.x version is supported up to Java 7. Spring Boot 1.x version is supported up to Java 7 only. But whereas Spring Boot 2.x supported minimum Java 8 is required. Minimum Java 8 version to latest Java version supported. So remember guys, there are the two different types of versions available in the Spring Boot as of now. 1.x is the old version of the Spring Boot that is supported up to Java 7 only, whereas Spring Boot 2.x minimum version Java 8 and minimum Java 8 is required, and it is supported to the latest Java version supported. So that is the most important and interesting point, guys, what you need to understand. Okay. So what is the difference between this Spring Boot 1.x and 2.x version is Spring Boot 1.x is supported to synchronous application development only. Spring Boot 1.x is supported to synchronous application development only. Synchronous means blocking request model. That means whenever user submits a request to your application, user must wait until your application returns the response back. That means user is blocked. But whereas in the Spring Boot 2.x supported to asynchronous application, nothing but reactive programming. Okay. Reactive programming means non-blocking request model. That means user submits a request to the application and the user no need to wait for response. User can do other work in the meantime. Whenever response is ready from the application, it will notify to the user to collect the response. So this is known as non-blocking request model, asynchronous. So that is supported by Spring Boot 2.x, because in the Java 8, the Java 8 supports RxJava, a module called RxJava supported or implemented in the Java 8 reactive programming, that is known as non-blocking request model, that is introduced in the Java 8 support. So Spring Boot 2.x is supported additionally to that. So that is the difference what you have to understand between 1.x and 2.x. 2.x only, don't worry. 1.x is outdated. So whatever the project we developed on 1.x earlier, 1.x introduced in 2014, 2.x introduced in 2018. Okay. So the code, 40% of the code we already developed on 1.x. I will share my experience, one of my experience. When I am working for Apple client, That is when I'm working in Wipro in that year of 2018. At that time, I have worked for Apple client. Apple is my client. So, so at that time, we already implemented Spring Boot 1.x based microservices. We already developed 40% of code is completed. In 2018, at that time only, whenever the Spring Boot 2.x introduced, we started converting the entire 1.x code into 2.x. Okay, so that experience also I already have. And what is an advantage of going to microservices? I will tell you. Everybody is using, that means everyone is using the website apple.com. Okay, that is one of the project I have worked, apple.com. That project I worked. That project is a 15 years back project. That means that project process only 15 orders per second, 15 orders per second. The legacy project. Apple.com, guys, Apple website, Apple. That project, whenever customer visit to that website to buy any Apple product, just 15 orders per second only it will process. That is the capacity of that project, 15 years project that is. Once we migrated to microservices, after applying the Spring Boot, once we converted to microservices, now it is processing 8,000 orders per second, 8,000 orders per second. That is what the achievement we got actually after migrating to microservices. See how it is more powerful than the monolithic. So that is very, very important. What you guys need to understand, how it will increase the performance and all. We'll see in the architecture level about all these things. Okay, that is what about the demo, guys. I think hope everyone is clear. Any questions, let me know. So I will give half an hour break. In between this time, discuss with the management, talk with the management and the fees and all, complete your formalities, and they will give a new link to you who already paid. You can join in that new link. From 11 o'clock, we are going to start the first application on the Spring Boot. So we'll start the first application. Today, the whole day, we are going to see all these concepts of Spring Boot in detail, how to develop microservices on the Spring Boot, and how the architecture of the microservices will work and all. That I will explain in tomorrow before going to start the microservices application development and the concepts of the cloud, mostly by today ending or tomorrow morning. We'll see about that. Step by step you can go. Okay, any questions? Let me know. Nagesh, class timing is obviously 9 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Tomorrow also same only, but tomorrow it will extend to another 1 hour or 2 hours tomorrow. Okay, 2 days only, no? 8 hours, 8 hours. Tomorrow I will take some extra time, maybe up to 7:30 or something. Okay, in between some breaks will be there. Don't worry, we are not taking any continuous class. Even I am not a robot to discuss, or you are not a robot, right? We'll give a breaks in between that. Okay, this is about the discussion, and we'll see you. Hope by 11 o'clock we'll start the session again. Thank you guys. Thank you for coming for the demo. And remember, this link will expire. They will send a new link for the people who paid so they can join the batch. Thank you.